Alright, so for this week, we are not going to have a Zoom meeting. We're going to have one next week, actually, just to bring them back from one last week. But this week, I am going to just post a couple of videos, probably 2 videos. I'm going to do one for adding and one for subtracting. They'll both be available, unless I get them both done in one video. And then you will see next week, on Tuesday, will be an overview of your project. So on Thursday, I'll post a little bit so you guys can get started. And then next week, all you're going to work on is your project, and there will be a whole video on like exploitations, going over everything like that. If you do want to get started, you can hop on to Zoom on Friday and ask questions, and I can answer them then, or anything like that. I just don't want to post too much so you guys get confused with what you're doing. So this is your last packet. We are going to finish by doing adding and subtracting fractions. Once we have learned equivalent fractions, which we have, adding and subtracting are pretty simple to do, and we're going to go over that right now. So, day 1 of your packet is equivalent fractions. We have done something like this before. I'm going to show you one more example just to have it in your mind of how we do this. So how you would do it for number 1, if you're looking at it, you're looking at which set has both numbers, the numerator or the denominator. The denominator has both numbers, and you're trying to figure out which number is smaller. Okay, 9 is smaller than 54. So you're trying to find how can I get from 9 to 54. You are trying to multiply by something. If you can't think of what it is when you multiply, you can list your multiples: 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, 54, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That means you multiply by 6, and if you multiply by 6 there, you do it on the top. So 6 times 6, you would get 36. Okay? So this whole page is doing the equivalent. If you need more help, if you go down on Google Classroom a little bit, I did a whole video on equivalent fractions, and that's when we were still doing the Zoom lessons, but I was posting other lessons as well. So that's all equivalent fractions. If you need extra help, let me know, and I'm more than happy to go through more of those. Alright, let's get to adding and subtracting. So the first 2 pages are all adding. Starts with very simple ones, and you're going to think, oh, this is so easy, and then it gets to the hard ones that you're going to see more often. These are simple fractions because if you look at them, the denominators on all of these are the same. The one rule, whenever you add or subtract, you have to have the same number as your denominator. Okay, if you have different denominators, you cannot add them until you find the same denominators. And you can always find a denominator that is the same, but once they are the same, you don't have to do anything to it. Now, how you add it and how a lot of people get confused is, as soon as your bottom numbers are the same, these are both 6, okay? Once they're both 6, you can do the step. If they're not both 6, you have to change your problem to get them both to the same number. And there's always a way to get the same denominator. Sometimes you're getting into a really big number, sometimes you're not. So if you think about how we ordered fractions, we always found that same denominator by listing the multiples. That's what you're going to eventually do. But on this page, much easier. The denominator is the same. That means that when you have your answer, your denominator is going to be that number. Okay? So I always write that first, because if you don't, you may get confused on what is my denominator. Because when you do the numerator, all you're going to do is you're going to add these 2 together. 2 plus 2. 2 plus 2, you would get 4. And it's 6. Now the reason you write 6 first is because some people like to do 6 plus 6 and get 12. And that is not how we add fractions. Once your denominator is the same, you don't do anything to the denominator. It stays the same. Okay? But you will add your numerators as long as the bottom number, the denominator, is the same number. Okay? Let's look at a few more. So let's look at number 3. Number 3, if I look, my denominator, they are both 11. That means my answer would be 11. Now, they're both the same. I wrote the denominator already, so that means I can add the top. 1 plus 5 is 6. And 1 11th plus 5 11ths is 6 11ths. This might seem super easy. It should be, hopefully. The main thing is you have to look at your denominator. Let's do one more. Alright, we'll do number 2 since we're already here. So we're going to go back up. Let's look at number 2. If you look at number 2, 1 7th plus 3 7ths, 7 and 7 are the same. That means I can rewrite it as something over 7. And then I add the top. 1 plus 3 is 4. So there's not a lot of work if they're adding simple fractions. Most of the time you're not going to have simple fractions. Very rarely you will. But once you change the problem, you always make it into a simple fraction, and that's the only way to add it is with simple fractions, meaning they have to have the same denominator with adding and subtracting. So subtraction and addition are very, very similar. So once we do the addition ones, the subtraction should be pretty easy. Okay, so all these are simple. They have the same denominator. They're already common denominators. You can add. So that's a term you'll hear a lot. You need a common denominator. Once they're common, the same, you can go ahead. So you guys should be able to fly through that page. All right, let's look at this one. This is not simple fractions. These are ones where the denominators are not the same. When your denominators are not the same, you have to make them the same. So this is one where you might be using a little bit of extra space on your paper. This is where when we ordered them. You are going to look at your denominators. So to do these, you are going to have to show work. You can't do them without showing work. It's something I'm going to require you to do. So when you do it, I'm going to show my work off to the side. So I'm going to make a bunch of squares eventually, you'll see, but I'm going to start by rewriting number 1. I'm going to rewrite my fractions. 7/10 plus 2/4. Now, your denominators are not the same. This is not 10 plus 4 is 14 and 7 plus 2 is 9. You do not just add them, okay? Unfortunately, it's not that easy. You have to take your denominators and make them the same. So we're thinking back to when we ordered fractions. That was 2 weeks ago, I believe. We ordered fractions. So you're going to take that denominator and you are going to list the multiples until you find the same number. So you're going to add them up. So I'm going to start with 10 and I have 4. I have to find when are they going to be the same. To do this, you're going to repeatedly add it. So 10 plus 10 be 20. You get another one, that's 30. Same with 4. You're trying to find, can I get to 10? If not, okay, can I get to 20? If not, can I get to 30? If not, add another 10 and see if you can get there. So 4, I'm going to keep adding it. I'm going to get 8, 12, 16, 20. I got to 20. That is my lucky number, and what you don't realize is you are doing 6th grade math by doing this type of thing. This is called finding the least common multiple. Okay? This is also the least common denominator. That's how you do it. So now, if you think back to when we ordered, we already did all these steps. Okay, we had more than 2 numbers though, so this is a little easier. You're going to take both of these numbers, 7/10 and 2/4, and you need to make them both into the number you found on the side. The number I found on the side is 20th, and that goes on my bottom. Okay. Now you're trying to find equivalent fractions, which was page 1. You're trying to see, how do I get from 10 to 20? What am I going to multiply by? Hopefully you are seeing that you multiply by 2. And once you multiply by 2, you multiply by 2 on the top. And 7 times 2 is 14. Then you go to your next one. 4 times what is 20? Hopefully you see that it's 4 times 5. And you would do 2 times 5. And when you do 2 times 5, you would get 10. Okay. Now this is where you can now add these fractions together. If you're working with your parents, they might be having you start simplifying them down. You can do that if they want to go through that with you. I don't want to confuse you guys too much. We're going to start next year off with simplifying fractions and making them, reducing them. For now, we're just going to master finding equivalents, adding, and subtracting. Okay? But if that's something they want to work with you on, that's completely fine. Or if you want to learn how to do that, you can send me an email, and I can send you an individual video on how to simplify, if you would like. Just don't want to confuse everybody. Alright, so now you have 2 fractions with common denominators. They both have 20. That means I can now add those together. So I would add 14 20ths plus 10 20ths. Now the bottom is the same. You do not add the bottom together. It's 20, so my answer would be 20. And now I can add the top. 14 plus 10 is 24. 24. So your answer would be 24 over 20, and that is a perfectly good answer for right now. Okay, and I would just circle it since you will have so many numbers on these problems. Now, it takes a little bit of work. This page should take you like much longer than the previous page. Kind of did this so that the one page is super easy. The one takes a little bit more time. You need to show your work on all these, okay? Now, this is not the best setup for showing your work, so how I would just do it is I would then, okay, that's one. Okay, and then maybe I go number 2 over here. And if you need to use the back, that's fine too. But you've circled your answer. I know where the answer is. Okay, on number 2. First, start by rewriting your problem. It is 3/4 plus 1/2. Now, you're going to realize some of these, it's very easy to find the common denominator. Some of them, it takes a little bit more time. For this one, you're going to see it's pretty simple, and you're going to start being able to do them in your head, but not yet. We're still practicing. But as you keep adding and subtracting fractions and finding least common denominators, all that, you're going to start to be able to realize the equivalents in your head. So if we think back to the first step last time, I'm going to take my 2 denominators. They are different. I need to make them the same. So to do that, I'm going to list my multiples like I did here. So I'm going to list 4, and my other one is 2. I need to make it so that I get the same number in both sets. So if I start at 4, if I repeatedly add 4, I'm going to get 8. If I can add it again, I'll get 12. You can keep going if you really want to. If you go to 2, I'm going to repeatedly add 2. 2, 4. I got 2 sets of 4. Even though it's my first number, that is okay. That means that one of your numbers is already in an equivalent fraction. Do you get these? Do you get the handle of the steps you take? So to get the process in your head, I'm going to encourage you to rewrite it the same way so you're always doing the same thing, at least to start. Okay, so the first one would be 3/4. And I want to find how many fourths does that equal. And my other one would be 1/2. And how many fourths does that equal? Now this is where we said this is the same fraction. It helps to write it in this way because you're practicing doing the same steps. If you really want to see how it works, it's really 4 times 1 gets you 4. So 3 times 1 gets you 3. And 3/4 is the same as 3/4. You don't have to write those steps out, but you should be writing that 3/4 is how many fourths, and just rewrite it. Okay? Same with 2. 2 times what is 4? 2 times 2 is 4. That means on the top, you would also write times 2. 1 times 2 is 2. And now they're both in fourths, so then I can add them together. 3/4 plus 2/4. They both have fourths on the denominator, so my new denominator is also fourths. Once you do that, all you do is add the top. 3 plus 2 is 5, and 5/4 is my answer. Okay. That one's a little bit easier because you're dealing with smaller numbers. You're going to start realizing if it's multiples of 2, it's pretty simple to find a common denominator. And there always will be a common denominator no matter what numbers you use. Even if you don't think they go into each other, they will. Alright, let's try another one. So I'm going to draw my line to keep my work nice and neat. I'm going to go to number 3 just to keep in order. Number 3. Number 3, you're dealing with 1/2 plus 2/3. Okay? First step, rewrite both numbers below. First I have 1/2, then I have 2/3. Okay? Next step, find the common denominator. Take your 2, take your 3, what's your multiples? 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. I don't see any 3's over here, so I gotta go to my 3's. 3 plus 3 is 6. Oh, they both have 6 in them. That means that I'm trying to make them both into a fraction with a denominator of 6 So then I would go over here, rewrite it as 6. And then you're going to find, how do I get from 1/2 to 6? Find, how do you get from 2 to 6? You're going to see it's 2 times 3 and 1 times 3. 1 times 3 is 3. So you have 3 6. And then you're going to do 3 times what is 6? And you're going to see it's 3 times 2 is 6. So 2 times 2 is 4. Then you're going to take those two fractions. They have the same denominator. I can add them together. So 3 6 plus 4 6. The denominators are the same, so it's going to stay in 6th. And the tops I add together. The numerator is 3 plus 4, and you're going to get 7 6. So a reminder, if you're working with your parents on this, you do not have to simplify it. It's perfectly fine leaving it. Your parents probably know as improper fractions. We're going to leave it like that for now. We're going to start by reducing them next year. Just don't want to confuse everyone. It's easier to do in person. So we will start by reducing them next year when we begin the year. So for all these, it's the same process. Try and organize your work so when I look at these, I can actually see what we're doing on them. Follow this process. So we write the problem, list both numbers and put equals, then take your two denominators, find where they're the same, switch them both into whatever number you circled up here, multiply across, get your new fractions, and then add those together. Bottom stays the same, numerators you add, and that is your answer. Okay? I'm going to post another one on subtraction. It's pretty much the same process except at the end you subtract. I'm still going to post a couple of them. So you see, so that video will probably be a little bit shorter. If you would like extra help, me to do some more problems, I am more than happy to. So that is it for adding fractions. If you have questions, let me know, guys.